The infinity loop is the tools of communication that heals and glues society back together. Our podcast is about disruption. We disturb the system that says it's normal and okay to communicate in the old, tired, ineffective, and unintelligent ways. There's a cynical belief rooted in so many of us in which we've told ourselves we can't help how we think or behave because our brains are so wired to react from low-level consciousness that's habitual and automatic. We're coming from our egos where they're running the show and not the infinity loop, where the ego is in a helpful place as a healthy sense of self, so it can help us be in our connected, abundant selves. We're saying by intentionally stepping into the infinity loop, we can affect every interaction we have and change the world. The Infinity Loop Group podcast is going to be about moving from the either-or to both-and way of thinking, where we transcend and include, as Ken Wilber teaches, in which we transcend the limitations of the old masculine and old feminine, but include what is healthy and helpful. What will emerge is a new, balanced, and integrated masculinity and femininity. The time has come where the divine feminine way of being is going to arise. We must learn from it as we let our old ways die, so a new human is resurrected and transfigured. That new human will truly change the world. This podcast is also about having a growth mindset, which hungers to love well while practicing elegant and intelligent self-care. We face our wounds, egos, and shadows in preparation to give this life everything we've got to make the world more connected and beautiful, because we're more connected and beautiful.
Welcome to the Infinity Loop Group podcast. I'm Riley Burns.
I'm Krista Vorse.
And we're going to dive right back into where we left off with the poem and our return. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserves your love and attention. Buddha.
So one of my friends shared this poem with me. We had a party at our house up in Ashland, Oregon, and it was St. Patrick's Day of 17, and Derek Walcott had just died that day. And she said, oh, he's the author of my favorite poem. And it was interesting because it was poetry. We were doing all this Irish poetry at our house. And I said, why is this your favorite poem? And she said, just read it and you'll understand. And I realize we're all familiar with this poem in one way or the other. But it's called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. I understand. I felt both, why it was her favorite poem. I felt both elated at each line and sad. I lived so long without this poem. What would my life have been like had this lived inside of me. Now it does. And I'll never abandon this poem like I've abandoned myself again. I am returning to love. I sent this to my former partner, Leo. He wrote, I wonder, after all we've been through, is it possible to be with another and not ignore yourself? I wonder that too. Our focus is to greet ourselves again. Maybe yours is too. That is the great love affair.
And some wonderful reflection questions would be, what would it look like to greet yourself again? You know, what would it be like to hold that space? To me, what comes up is the South African phrase "salbono," which is their version of their version of hello, which is very much about seeing someone, not just saying hi, but acknowledging their presence of life. And to me, that would be how I would have greeted myself again if I were to do it for the first time, is to have that salbono.
That's great.
What would it feel like to feast on your life? I think many different people have many different versions of what feasting is like. To me, it's about truly feasting on each moment and having appreciation for the simplest things that come into our lives and can truly be our biggest joys.
The simple pleasures of life, the aliveness of everything we feel and sense and taste and touch and nature and
in making that choice to make that a part of our lives, right? Sometimes the simplest things that bring us the most joy are the first things that we let go with our busy life, and realizing that those are probably more important than whatever we're trading it for.
You want to talk about how we live our lives?
Well, it just, the fact we live in Santa Barbara, we choose to go into the ocean on a very regular basis because to us that is fulfilling, and that is a big aspect of why we live here. And so to me, that is a version or a form of feasting on our life.
That's good.
How have you perhaps ignored yourself? How do you look for love outside of yourself? For me, it's definitely I ignored myself by looking for love outside of myself, right? By not loving myself, I was searching for it through other people, and through that process, I was ignoring all my own need to be loved and cared about.
By yourself.
Yeah.
Like Buddha said.
How does the awareness that you know yourself by heart give you a kind of warmth inside, a kind of containment that feels sturdy? And I definitely feel like the more you love yourself, the more the outer world negatively doesn't affect you, and you are able to imprint your positivity on the world more effectively, because your positivity isn't coming from a lack, but from the abundance, because you have found the well of love inside of you that you are now able to share it with others.
That's beautiful.
What would a love letter to yourself say? For me, I'm a short and sweet kind of guy. I think it would be about loving myself, as in I'm always enough, and I am also always pursuing a better version of myself the next day. How do I hold myself and accept all my shortcomings and weaknesses, and also know that these are things that I'm going to work on every day.
Growth mindset.
Because it's a version of loving myself, right?
Yeah.
The truest
Yeah.
loving
Showing up
ourselves,
for yourself in the most courageous way.
right, is to go that I'm going to better myself each day. That's a version of self-love. I love where I'm at, and I love that I'm going to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. And not falling back in a self-acceptance that is not, there's a fixed mind that's not a growth mindset.
Well, that it gives excuses for bad behavior, right?
Or
oh, I
not
love
living
myself.
bigger, or not growing more. Yeah.
Right.
Not overcoming things in yourself, that it's all falling into so much acceptance that we're not living on that edge, like you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
That edge of I'm always wanting to work on that part of, yeah.
All right.
And if we don't have that second piece, I don't think we can change the world, and we don't really living in the infinity loop, because it is so much about being, that it's such a privilege to be alive. You don't want to squander anything.
Right, like loving yourself for where you're at is great and all, but if you don't have the part about loving yourself enough to pursue better, then you're not truly loving yourself.
Yeah.
You're enabling yourself to be less than your best self.
And you're not connected to your future self that is always present, because the infinity loop is such a high view. It holds the past, present, and future. So everything you're doing is because you are loving your future self. That's something people very much are struggling with right now when it comes to health.
Yeah.
They're disconnected from their future self. Otherwise, they would not be putting that in their body. They're disconnected. They're not really loving themselves. Yeah, that's the interesting rub, right?
Very much so.
I love it.
The homecoming. For some of us, the biggest source of suffering hasn't been because of losses outside ourselves, but the loss of ourselves. Major homecoming time. Krista Vorse.
The arrival of that poem, Love After Love, was timely. It came in both Leo and my life during our homecoming to ourselves, which I call the great love affair. So this was a time after we had broken up, and we were both going through so much healing as I was writing this book. Leo meditated on that poem for weeks, and then we chatted about it soon after he returned from his transformational road trip. Leo said, "It's just like that poem by Derek Walcott. It's coming home to yourself. I broke up the stanzas, but the crux of the message is, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart." Homecoming is about the awareness that you have so allowed yourself to become diminished. You were willing to give your heart to anybody but yourself because you were so estranged from your heart. Ooh, the human condition. That's the stranger who has loved you all your life. You have this mystical experience of this flash of insight. Oh my God, I have ignored my own heart for another. Then I said, because of my recent awareness of this, I just noticed where I've been habituated to not tune into my heart and allow my heart to hurt, which wants to serve as a beautiful guidance system. It tells me what it wants to be around, what's life-giving, what is loving toward another. Now I'm willing to fully feel my heart and allow the pain, because the cost of not feeling it is immense.
Leo. My experience of what estranges us from our hearts is we compare our insides to others' outsides, which we idolize. What estranges us from our own hearts is our unwillingness to descend into our own shadow and to forgive ourselves for not being perfect. We can love our shadow, but have compassion on our shadow. Integrate our shadow and all of our parts. As soon as that happens, we're home. We really can't even then ignore our heart for another. Those days are over. As soon as you experience that homecoming, that's your true self, because the true self includes all of your parts. Then you're free, the freedom that increases our capacity to love. The freer we are, the better we love.
Isn't that well said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peel your image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Leo, you're always at the banquet table after you've come home because to ignore yourself comes from a place of scarcity. I'm not enough, so I have to ignore myself for another because I am not enough. I need another to make myself whole.
What caused this to happen to you? I asked him.
Time alone, being on the road trip, enjoying myself. I greeted myself, arriving at my own door. I sat with myself, warts and all.
Me too. Being with myself at such a deeper level in this time of my life.
When I started out, I said one theme of my road trip was to face my fear. My fear of being alone, which ultimately the ego's fear of death. Once you stare at the fear long enough, the fear just vanishes. All that there is love. The problem isn't fear, it's the fear of the fear. It takes us away from our home instead ourselves.
Inside ourselves.
Inside ourselves. In search of ourselves because we don't think we are enough and we can't face the fear we are not enough. That's because then we'd have to face the ego's fear of death. When we are able to let go of the attachment to the ego's fear of death, indestructible life emerges. You realize you can let go of your identification and let yourself fall into that death. Mm-hmm. And when you come back up, you realize that not only am I okay, but I'm bigger now. Richard Rohr teaches this is level 7 of his 9 levels of spiritual development. I'm bigger than I thought I was.
This is what I call the bounce. Welcome home.
So beautiful.
When we're home in ourselves, our capacity to stand in one loop of the infinity loop vastly increases. We know better how to hold our dignity and another's. Our compassion for our own weaknesses that we acknowledge makes it easier to have compassion on another's. We have enough within ourselves to validate us without our need to promote bad behavior by how we permit it. We respond in calmness and containment and address what doesn't work for us. Our self-love alerts us we have a healthy right to model what it means for all to be treated well. Wow, what he said was so beautiful, when he talked about the death. That's, again, like our previous chapters, we were talking about how being dislodged anytime we're going through anything that it makes us uncomfortable or a sense of a loss, we get dislodged from our comfortable place. It's a death. It's a death to our control, a death that we're getting old, anything. Loss is such a part of it. And we're dying before we die, but we're falling into the great abyss of love. That's why all spirituality is paradoxical.
Yeah, to me, as you talk about to the death too, I look at death very differently, especially after hearing someone explain it very well. I'm 33. I've had 33 deaths at this point because each year I truly am so different from the last that it truly is a death of that person, because I am not that same person I was as much of just a year ago, let
Yeah.
alone 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think once you start embracing that type of view, the ultimate death, or at least what most people see of the death of this life, doesn't seem as fearful, I
That's
feel
so
like.
beautiful. You know what this is making me also think about? One of the principles that we're going to get into about, the ability to dialogue and to see somebody. They call it making strange. And that's where you look at somebody you've known for years and you make strange, meaning I'm going to look at you like a stranger, anew. That's like giving the sal bona. So that's letting go of all the shame. Well, this is a great lead into the next chapter. But letting go all the things that we've already said. This is who I am. This is my problems. This is where I'm stuck. This is where I can't change. This is what I've done wrong that labels me. This is what identifies me. And we can make strange, again, greeting ourselves with ourselves and go, who are you today? Right? Who are you today? What is happening, emerging today that you are living in that recreation?
Some reflection questions. We don't manage our lives well when we're estranged from our hearts. Can you see where you may be estranged from yourself? Does anything come up for you?
Um, I am leaving that space because I am open to seeing where that could be true for me. I know you were reflecting on it, and you're not really thinking there's any place where you are.
Well, I mean, I think that was something I might have struggled with when I was younger, but
I don't know.
have
I don't know if I am either. But
as I've practiced the infinity loop, it makes it hard for you to be estranged to your heart, because you're always reflecting on the self-care of how am I maybe not taking care of myself, which is causing me not to take care of others better. And so when I'm continuously going through this checklist and going back to it just, if I were to do it, it doesn't happen for long. And so
yeah,
it's something I am
yeah.
proud of, I would say, because I think it was something as a child I probably did a lot.
Yes, you were always running from yourself, right, to go play with another kid.
Yeah,
And that,
searching for that happiness outside of ourselves.
which is interesting because the Infinity Loop kids and the Tao, the adolescent opportunity, where it's developing children and youths. I was working with a grade school kid last night, and I said, "Oh, this is spiritual development," and how they're able. I mean, this is what's going on with the addiction to devices and social media, is teaching people how children, because they also have so much neuroplasticity, like they can learn this stuff so fast and make shifts so fast and break habits. So it's very exciting. But that coming these are that's my vision and my passion, is these are the next generation, and how do we teach these children to be, instead of, again, what's normal childhood behavior, questioning even that and going, what are they capable of, to come home to themselves and not need to always go, oh, I'm bored, I'm this and that. Friendships, like, no, how do they sit with themselves and love themselves that deeply and know themselves?
Perfect into the next question of how will feeling your heart fully with all the pain and beauty help you to not be estranged from yourself? You know, it's
Oh, because it's also the guidance system, right? What I was saying for me, I was thinking it's my guidance system.
well, when you love yourself more fully, warts and all, you don't allow someone else to treat you poorly or take advantage of you. So to me, that's the most, because we estrange ourselves the most when we put ourselves in negative situations and don't look out after ourselves, right? We go, oh, we deserve to be treated that way by someone else. Oh, we don't deserve to be treated healthfully in a relationship because I wasn't even supposed to be there to begin with, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. But when you truly see your value, you don't allow people to treat you that way.
And that I think people who are kind of predatory, they will seek out people with open, loving hearts because they want that life force that is in you. They want it from themselves, and they have to diminish it. You said something that was so important. Oh, that's why the work healing from any kind of abuse is that, yes, like we look and go, wow, that's what narcissism is. That's what happened. That's where it twisted your head. But the transformational path is all, where is the place that they got in? That
Oh,
there's,
where did I not love myself enough to allow them to manipulate me into thinking I needed their love? Because so much of why we allow narcissists into our lives is because we are looking for validation or love from them.
yeah. And that's why it's like, and I think there also can be a vulnerability based on how you grew up that could sort of imprint, you know, it's kind of a narcissistic thing. And that's, again, you have such compassion for yourself in this healing journey. But yeah.
Where do you feel you are not enough as a result of comparing yourself to others? I know Instagram creates a
Yeah,
lot of
Instagram.
problem for people with that kind of stuff where it's so easy to compare. I would say this is one thing my dad taught me at a very early age about comparison is for every one thing you see is good about someone's life, I guarantee you there's 10 things that you would dream that you would never want to be dealing with that that person is dealing with. And at a young age, he really pounded that into me, and I think it really resonated always of just having compassion that everyone always has their own story. And so that is almost how I've fought that comparison for so
That's
long
good. He gave you some good
of going that, like,
parenting.
do I know the cost of those things that I might be jealous of? I probably don't, and I probably am unwilling to pay those costs, because if I was willing to pay those costs, I would have whatever I'm jealous of.
And Leo used the phrase, comparing our insides to someone else's outsides.
Right.
Which I
That's
think is actually from Henry Cloud, a great teacher on, psychologist on boundaries. I think that might have come from him, but it's the idealized self, right? We're comparing our insides and going, oh my God, my insides are struggling. Well, they're not struggling, and we're seeing their outsides.
well, and because of things like Instagram, you're seeing the best of their outsides, if not maybe even a computered altered to make seem more perfect outside. And then you want to compare how you view yourself to this curated perfect version
Yeah.
of someone's outer self.
Yeah.
And
and
that's
the comparing is the first look. It is the false self.
what the
The com-
comparison is the theft of joy or of happiness.
That's good. And then some will go, oh, you need that to encourage or to stimulate you. And I thought, no, it can be both. It's like, no, I am enough. Because that is one of the things of the unhealed masculine, in my opinion, is that it's still being very energized, Riley, from, you hear some of these very successful podcasters that are still very energized from the false self energy of the not enoughness that they are compensating for. And I think that's a valid criticism of the unhealed masculine. right?
I very much agree. Yeah.
Very, very much. It's like, what if what would it look like to accomplish all these things from being enough?
Well, I think it would be someone that is coming from a place of abundance. And when that happens, I think the level of people that we help is beyond anything we've ever imagined.
And there really is no comparing, and there's none of that in the true self. That's, you're in your false self.
Well, because your true self also knows you are all connected. And so why would you compare yourself to yourself in a better than or worse than?
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
Right,
they are, and I
You
have that.
you wouldn't say your left hand is worse than your right
Right.
hand.
Like I've seen people, and I can feel going, ooh, what they got is me, and I'm them, and it's like I'm sharing in the joy, right? It's all, and that's the thing again about children. It's the we are talking about the evolution of a new human that is coming up in the world, and that our argument would be that this is the infinity loop that helps create that. But it's also these children that are right now in such a crisis point, right?
What-
Of where they could be up level, they could just be these amazing spiritual beings that are able to find their true self, that goes, why would I be comparing myself to somebody?
Well, to me, there's a belief that through human history, we have been led by, at least over the last few hundred years, by one wing, which would be the masculine wing, which is why we create repeating the same mistakes over and over. And there is a belief that we are moving into an age not led by the feminine wing, but to where we have both wings, so that for the first time in human history, we can fly straight. And to me, it makes perfect sense that throughout society right now, we are having this conflict of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, having these people questioning their own sexuality, because I think we are morphing and evolving what all these definitions mean, because we are needing to find this equal balance in all of us. For us to truly evolve as a society, we need to embody both the masculine and the feminine.
I love it. And one of the things that I haven't said this yet, but this is an important thing to say. We talked about chauvinism, but there's also female chauvinism. And that was where they think they're the better sex. And that was coming up a lot when that time of 16, 17, and that women just do everything better somehow, which is just bullshit. And this is so I love it that it's just so the both and that is the infinity loop, right? It is just the balance and the integration and the mirroring and the honoring of both.
So in what areas would you have compassion for your weaknesses and accept them? To me, I think this goes back to that love letter I said about accepting myself for where I'm at, and also loving myself enough to know I will continue to work on those weaknesses, not accept them as if they are who I am forever.
Amen. Yeah, that's good.
You know,
And again, when we don't have acceptance, we go to a shame, and then we've got to throw it into the shadow because it's not aligned with our idealized self.
well, I think of like a great example is how many people talk about I'm late to everything. And they're just totally okay with being late to
That's
everyone.
their identity now.
Right. And they're like, oh, I'm just late to things. And to me, I go, oh, you don't love yourself enough to be on time. And you're also so rude that you don't care about other people's time, that you continue to be like this. It's not, I almost never hear a go, oh, I'm late and this is something I'm really working on. They say it as in, everyone else should just accept them and love them for who they are,
Yeah.
of being a late, unable to tell time person. And so
It's so good. Roar talks about how, we have to be careful to not forgive ourselves too quickly.
right.
Like sit in the lamentations And that is true. It's like I see, so this I'm just, and they kind of come up with a cute little name to describe their character defect. I'm judgy, I'm like, no, judgy is
Or I'm bitchy.
oh, I'm bitchy. Am I being bitchy? Or, I'm just this, or I'm, this little, and like, ooh, why are we forgiving? But it's not changing because we are forgiving that so quickly. Right. We're pushing so heavily on the acceptance.
Well, we're accepting it to the level of it not being an issue instead of accepting it as a weakness that is something we need to work on. We're accepting it as oh, this is just who I am, and someone is being judgy and rude if they want me to try and be a better version of myself.
Yeah. Okay, there's something you just said that was, I have to bring it up. Maybe I'll
okay.
Remember it.
Well, here's the last question of, do you see your fear?
Oh, I have to say this. This is my confession.
Okay, yes.
Sorry. This is my confession because I am changing. We're on the 6th podcast. I have changed so much since we've started doing this podcast. It's so wonderful. But and I'm telling the world this, who is ever watching this podcast, one of my areas that I have gotten into trouble with is my lack of emotional honesty. And I've pushed it into the shadow. And it's the same reason why I had the problem at the meeting at my house.
When you say emotional honesty, are you referring to you're feeling angry and you override it, or not acknowledge it?
I don't actually agree with that person. I don't like the way they raise their children. I don't like their values. I don't like them. I don't want to be their friend.
But
it's
you
like,
choose to still support
them. But
them?
it's like almost like I push that into my shadow because, again, I'm not having compassion on that instead of truly, it's my false self. It's a dance between my false self, and then I was like, let's put that in the shadow and let's go, oh, that's not acceptable. Instead of like, no, that's my fucking guidance system. Sorry, I said fucking again. But that's my guidance system. And so that's my emotional dishonesty of going, I'm not okay. And it's just how I have struggled with that, with really honoring my anger. But it's that acceptance of, oh, this is who I am. And this may cost me a lot, but I don't want to be around these people. And I need to be alone and come back to the great love affair and the great poem and feast on my own life and come back to that table with my own soul and not flee it for the junk food that I don't even want to eat.
And there's something you said about what you might lose. There is no loss greater than the loss of the integrity of yourself. Mm-hmm. No matter what worldly things you think you will lose by living in integrity, you will gain 10 times more in the version of self-love and the universe loving you back.
Yeah.
Because the universe, the world, loves authenticity. That's why everyone is always searching for who's being authentic. That's why podcasts have become so popular, because it's an opportunity for someone to truly be authentic, unedited for extended periods of time.
Yeah, that's why I like all this energy I have. We started this podcast because I'm like, I'm really in my integrity. And I said to myself, I've said this to me several times, but give me integrity or give me death. If I can't live in integrity, I'm ready to move on.
Amen.
Yeah.
And all we need is more people to live like that, and we'll live in a beautiful world.
So you can point out when I'm not in integrity.
Well, that's called being an accountability buddy.
Accountability.
The great compassion. Suffering ends when compassion shows up. James Finley.
A few years before the great love affair, great compassion showed up. He, masculine energy, began my return. While deep in my practice of living more from my inner life, one day great compassion arrived. I can't recall the first time he appeared, but I remember he came again when I was feeling sorrow over regrets in my life. I was driving in my little town of Ashland, Oregon. As I turned a corner, he was there next to me. We can be wide awake in the middle of daily life, and if we're paying attention, we'll hear and see things that our souls, true selves, older selves, God, whatever it is sending to us. I hear guidance, see and sense things, and see visions. It was a painful peek to look at my life, the choices I've made and the ways I was in error and not loving well. Before great compassion, I experienced that peak with commentary that wasn't seen through truth. What I saw and heard may have been true, but as Carolyn Mace teaches, it wasn't the truth. Great compassion showed up to show me the truth. What is true are the facts of what happened. The truth is, we don't know why things are the way they are. We don't know why people do what they do. Truth is about the spiritual perspective that transcends what's true.
For me, though, too, what resonates when you say we don't know why people do what they do. And if we did, we wouldn't judge them. To me, that's the ultimate bigger picture of if you truly understood why people do what we consider stupid, ignorant, evil even, you don't understand the path that they've gone through. And that, to me, is the ultimate compassion. Because then that's, once you're able to see that in others, you can then start seeing it in yourself, and you're able to see the big picture of why you make the mistakes you do and why you're going to correct them and grow from them.
Or you say, or it can go the other way around, because I say how very often the way we speak to others is how we speak to ourselves. If we have compassion for ourselves, then we can also extend. It's the both way, right?
100%.
The both ways. So good. And that's the truth that sets us free. The truth is, all that would condemn us is irrelevant in the presence of such love. That's the message the mystics, with their spiritual experiences, because that's what being a mystic really is it's an experiential relationship with the unknown, with presence of love. In the presence of that kind of love, we are set free. To my right and in front of me stands great compassion. He's a winged warrior, an angel that crouches down to hold me, but as tall as an old redwood tree. This masculine presence is my protection from the lies that threaten to name me. He guards me against anything that would tell me to look upon my life without great compassion. He's the final word. He's the proclamation of great love, and he is the truth. So he's a protector from the shame that would separate us and estrange us from ourselves.
Well, and it goes back to that shame that isn't ours, protecting us from the unclaimed shame.
That's the whole coming from being in separation. The belief, the experience of us being in separation from love and the divine itself. With him by my side, I look at my life with a tenderness that says, only great compassion is allowed here. With that safety, I'll be able to see anything I've previously feared to see in myself, because of my fear that it has the power to name me, diminish me, or take me out. He wraps his wings around me in comfort and protection. He takes me with him to the heights he travels. From that view, everything looks different. He creates awareness, expanded awareness, and pure awareness that rescues me from the constriction that makes my life way too small. After he showed up, I was able for the first time in my life to look upon what happened and cry with a great compassion. I never felt, with great compassion, I never felt the needed and appropriate compassion for myself. I mean, isn't that amazing that I never was able to do that? It was and still is one of the most beautiful and intimate encounters. We need to have access to great compassion and stand in the fires of the infinity loop to do this magic. Great compassion guards us from the attacks against our freedom that try to imprison us because we aren't aware we roam in this beautiful forest of redwood trees with no prison bars in sight. We need to feel that love and tenderness and realize it's our true self loving us. We're so much bigger than we think we are. Now, great compassion is with me always. I feel him right now, and I do. All we need is the awareness. We use our imagination to bring great compassion to our awareness. This is why we build up the false self. We constantly are having to overcompensate, compare. We constantly
So
have
when
to
you
go,
don't have the great compassion, you need to build up the ego, is what you're saying?
yeah, and compete and
'Cause
be in
that's
the separate self.
It's like the false armor,
The
if you could
false
say.
armor. We have to be okay. Oh, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? Because we can't just sit in the presence of love and go, oh, you are more than okay, honey. Your truest, deepest essence is love and pure awareness. He's how we guard our minds. That's how we guard our minds. And the Stoics talk about that. You know, we have the capacity to put some protection and go, well, I can get rid of that, anxiety because I'm the one that brought it in. I mean, that's another way of even looking at it, right? That's the strength of the divine masculine. We hold fast to our spiritual experiences that liberate us from our suffering. As James Finley says, it's like once you've been liberated from eating junk food, you don't want to go back to it. I've been liberated from how I used to contribute to my own suffering by believing my faults are the truth, what I've been through makes me damaged goods, what others believe about me is the last word. We are more than that. We're found in the nothingness that is beyond this material plane. The true self exists in that nothingness. That's the mystery. It's nothing. It's empty. Look, it's empty. Yeah, but it's full. That emptiness is full. It's full of love. It's just not full of ourselves. Great compassion grounds me in my body, its sturdy strength like a redwood tree. When we recognize the truth, we're not flailed around by what others think. We become warriors when we have a solid foundation. Boy, that is my identity. I am a warrior.
That you are.
Anytime we realize we're living our lives without great compassion, we use that awareness and to observe ourselves in witness consciousness, the watcher. It's that observer effect, right? As soon as we're able to watch ourselves, we realize, oh, what is this that's able to watch myself? I guess I'm not that. I guess I'm not that person that's thinking all these crazy thoughts, right? Because I'm something that's able to even watch that, right? Mm. To notice what we're thinking and what happens to us when we believe those thoughts, like Byron Katie teaches. Then we set an intention to call to mind great compassion as our winged angel. His power can shut down what isn't the truth. We allow him to do so. As I edit on this December 1st morning, I have a new awareness as I lay on my bed upon waking. I realize that I've become great compassion. I'm experiencing him as me in this moment. In the mystery of the true self, divine union, whatever is occurring beyond language, it's the ever-expanding awareness that though I'm not God, I'm not other than God either. As I type, I'm feeling my being as this winged warrior, its strength and gentleness. My body has wings with feathers. It's as the spiritual teachers say, our suffering comes as a result of our illusion of separateness from God, ourselves, each other, creation. It is an illusion. May we be wooed to drop into the awareness that not only is great compassion by our side, we are great compassion. I knew that this was the part of me that's in union with God, but now I experience it. Great compassion is powerful. May we live in the awareness of how full and sturdy and loving and calm and alert and wise and fast and beautiful we are in our true selves. Now this intimacy isn't just with great compassion loving me, it's the total trip of my form morphing into great compassion. It's another gift to help us disidentify with our passing form and stories. They are the dream. We awake from the dream and decide we like being awake. How deeply we know we are loved and are love. We step into the infinity loop and change the world. Once great compassion arrives, we have that to share with others. Great compassion is needed for our brokenness and all the ways and times we couldn't do then what we now know how to do. Then we're able to hold it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not that we don't do things that hurt. It's that we're able to look upon it all with great compassion for our brokenness. We bring it in close, hold it, love it, and forgive it. There's a choice to hate or have compassion. This doesn't mean we don't carry the gift of aversion for what isn't life-giving. It's that we let go of what constricts our bodies, our minds, and our hearts, and allow ourselves to live from a much higher view. Oh, that felt good to read.
Felt good to hear. Some more reflection questions. How will you use your imagination to bring in a reminder of great compassion into your life? What's your great compassion like? I think I really loved your imagery in this, especially for when we were living in Ashland, Oregon, talking about those redwoods, how there is such a loving masculine energy coming from these giant trees. And to see that as looking upon us with great compassion, to me is just a beautiful use of your imagination. And I really appreciate that. What will you help you experience yourself as great compassion? Meditate on being great compassion. I think this is a great practice for people too, because I think a lot of people don't. I feel like when I was first starting meditation, I needed some type of direction. And so having something to meditate on, I think can be very helpful for our meditative practices.
And yeah.
How will great compassion become a reflex?
And it's called like a holy imagination. It's how you are using your imagination. It's like I try to summon, seduce people's imagination. You can think this, well, you can just as well think that.
Right.
Because that is the awareness you're bringing up. You are, right? You're bringing it to your mind. It's a tool to bring to your mind. That's why stepping into the infinity loop, the image
you can choose to either beat yourself up, or you can choose to have the great compassion.
And
right.
Compassion, we keep talking about that word, but it is one of the characteristics of the whole self, the compassionate self, the connected, compassionate, creative, curious. Yeah.
How will the great compassion become a reflex for you when you struggle? Remember awareness, set intention, bring him in. Yeah, I mean, I know how much it has changed my life, and I am just not as uh, reactive
Oh, you were
because
saying this,
because
yeah.
I have the compassion for myself, so I no longer have to defend myself from others' judgment because I take that time to have the awareness, set the intention, and care about myself with compassion.
And you said that you wouldn't be triggered. You wouldn't emotionally react if you brought in great compassion.
Oh, that's the next.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
so
That's such
how
a
would
good
the
point.
great compassion help you tender heart towards yourself and others?
Help you have a tender heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And how would your ability call to mind great compassion to alter your body, mind, and spirit? And I would say both of these questions can kind of be combined together in the sense of that you are no longer triggered as easily, let's say, by outer experiences because you are always able to go to this place.
And even I would say if you were triggered, Riley, you could hold that fire because it's so grounding and you're like being witnessed. You could go, "Ooh, I'm feeling it," but it creates such emotional sobriety where you don't need to dump because you have the capacity to hold the pain and the vulnerability
Will
and
be
what you're going through.
because you have awareness for the trigger, but you set intention to not explode on someone or
because
react,
because the suffering ends when compassion shows up.
right?
So you
And
don't
then you
even need to set an
and then you
intention because you're choosing to go to inner stillness,
right,
right?
and when you go to inner stillness, you bring the person in that might have even been triggering you, and now they feel your compassion and are usually brought down from wherever escalated environment they are coming from.
And that's again, it just gets out of our little triggered, it's bringing on the frontal lobe, but it's just getting past our trigger. So the one of the principle of this spiritual development that we do is you experience this love, be it numinous love or great compassion, that's like a force outside of you, loving your wounded little self, and then you're like, holy crap, I am that person. I am that force. I am not other than that force. And then that wounded little self is like, fine. Because you're like, wow, whoa, that's the true self that isn't even identifying with the pain. Isn't that wonderful?
So beautiful. Well, as we come to the end, thank you again for joining us on our journey of the Infinity Loop group.
Thank you.
If this stuff resonates with you, please share, subscribe, like. It's very helpful for us to spread this message. And may the great compassion find you and you find it. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and God bless.